My name's Mahemoff. I work in Google Developer Relations along with Paul. We're both based in London, and we cover the EMEA region, Europe, Middle East, Africa. So we do developer relations. It means we work with developers one-to-one, as well as conferences like this, and we're always happy to hear. So please let us know if you're working on extensions and you've got cool things to share. Let us know. We're interested, and we can provide direct support with that. So today's talk is about extensions. And what extensions do is, simply put, they make the browser better. They do all the sorts of things that users want to do, that developers want to do to scratch their own itch. The kinds of things that the actual developers of the Chrome browser at Google could never have anticipated. Even if they did anticipate, you'd end up with millions of buttons and millions of menu items. So the whole point is to make it easy and to make it open for anyone else to expand and enhance the browsing experience. I want to give you a few examples here. So firstly, we've got Forecast Fox. So this is an extension that shows the weather while you're surfing. And you'll see there's an options page here. So I've previously left it in the previous venue, and now I can actually customize it, assuming we've got internet access here. So let's see if we can add Prague. And you'll find that each extension has its own options page. That's something that's actually built into the extensions mechanism. And so now we've set the location, we can actually go back, and if I'm surfing in the normal mode, which is in normal mode rather than being full screen, as I'm surfing, I can get an idea of the weather. And it's like an ambient display, so I can be visiting any website, and I'm always able to just have a quick glance up there and look at the weather. And if I want, I can expand it with a tooltip, and I can expand it even more with a more detailed view, what's called a browser action. And what you're seeing there is actually just a standard web page inside this what's called a browser action, a button that's sitting next to the address bar. So it's very straightforward to write something like that as well. An example that's a little bit more complex because it interacts with the rest of the web page is Awesome Screenshot. And so this is an extension that actually lets us take screenshots of the page. So you can see here, we've got a tooltip, and I can then capture a selected area, or let's just go with what we can see there. And so that is actually a screenshot I've got there. And I can say, I can point at my site, and I like to read the news from TechMeme, so I think it's a pretty awesome site as well as being captured by Awesome Screenshot. And then I can click there, done. I can save it. I could save it to my local system, or I could upload it, and that will generate a unique link for the image, and I could then share it on different social networking sites, or I can just show you that the link's been saved, basically the screenshot. So that's an example of an extension that's also launched from the browser action mechanism. Not all extensions have that mechanism, but the ones that I've shown you so far declare that they want to actually introduce a button into the browser. And then there's a third example here, which actually is also interacting with the web page. Instead of being like the screenshot, which is taking information from the web page, this is a script that actually gets injected into the web page and changes the content that you actually see there. So let me show you this one, change colors. As you can probably guess, change colors actually changes colors. We can set, basically you can set your own color scheme. Your color scheme will hopefully be better than mine if you choose to use this extension. But it works, it's very straightforward to use, and if I visit because I've clicked it once, it remembers which sites I'm actually applying it to, so I can always keep those sites customized. If I visit it again, you'll see that the site's normal and then it changes. So that's how extensions work. They, in this case, because it's a content script injection, it actually, the extensions can do different things, and one of the things it can do is basically provide a content script, which means it can provide CSS and JavaScript that actually run after the page is loaded. So you just provide the CSS and JavaScript to override whatever any web page has actually done. And that's why you'll see, that's why you would have noticed it goes white, it looks normal first, and now the script comes in after the page is loaded. You can find many, many more extensions at the gallery here, chrome.google.com/extensions. It's great fun as a user to customize your experience, and as a developer, what's nice about these extensions is they are really just zip archives, so you can actually download the extension, you can go into your installed directory where you've installed Chrome, and you can actually explore how people are actually writing these extensions as well. So you can learn from example. It's also easy to install extensions. This is one of the great benefits of the Chrome extension mechanism. All the user has to do is visit the gallery or find a link from anywhere. Extensions don't have to be on the gallery. They can also be hosted on your own homepage. And once the user clicks on this link to a CRX file representing the whole extension, it just goes straight away. There's a simple dialog. It tells the user what they're about to install. You can see an icon. It asks you for permission. So it says this extension will have access to your browsing history and private data on google.com. So it tells the user what they can expect the extension will be able to do, what their browser is allowing them to do. And that's it. They click install, and the extension is up and running. The next time they visit a web page, if the extension has a content script, it will affect that page. The button will be there straight away. You don't have to shut the browser down and start it up or anything else. It's there right away. It's also really easy to update. Extensions actually have an automatic updating mechanism. So if the version number increases, because you declare the version number as part of your extension, version number increases, the extension automatically updates to the latest version. The browser, like the Chrome browser, is always checking the user's extensions and checking against the original copy of the extension on a server, and it will happen automatically in the background. The only time the user will know that the extension is being updated, the only time they'll be prompted, is if you've increased the amount of permissions, that you need new permissions the user has to accept. Other than that, it's the same as the Chrome browser itself. It just updates silently in the background. So as far as the mechanism for writing an extension, it's pretty straightforward if you've done web development in the past. You get to use just the standards HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So what I've shown you here, so this weather app, for instance, all of that is just an HTML page. It's using JavaScript to make a remote call to the weather source. It pulls down the weather data and it renders it. It just shows it with just standard HTML and JavaScript like you've done with a normal web page. That basically is a web page. Similarly, when I did the injecting the color here, that's just standard CSS and JavaScript that you put into the page, that you just override whatever was set up by the page before that. So it is like writing a website, but it's actually like writing a website with Chrome. So it's one of the few times as a developer you get to say, I don't care about all these legacy browsers. I don't have to worry about maintaining compatibility with the 57 different versions of Internet Explorer and Firefox and even Chrome, because as I said, Chrome itself is a browser that's automatically updating. It's always keeping the user at the latest stable version. So when you're writing an extension, you can assume you have that one great latest version of Chrome, stable, fast, secure, and with all of these HTML5 features, the sorts of things you saw in the keynote today, the sorts of things you'll see in the upcoming practical HTML5 session that's coming up. So all of the features of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript that have made it into stable version of Chrome, you can actually take advantage of with your extension. As well as that, you can also get hold of things that probably every web developer would dream of getting hold of, and in this case, you're allowed to get hold of it as long as you declare it in your config. You can actually do things that no web developer can actually do with a normal website. So you can do things like access the user's bookmarks. You have to obviously get permission for these things, but if you ask at the start, if the browser will ask when the user installs this extension, you can read the user's bookmarks. So you could do things like show recommendations based on the sites they've bookmarked. You could add new sites to their bookmarks automatically, depending on their preferences. You can get hold of the user's history as well, which could also be great for making recommendations. You can also add to the context menu. So you can actually, the right-click menu here, you can add to that too. And you can basically add new items, and you can look at what the user selected. So there's a context menu extension, for instance, that does translation based on some text that you've selected. You can access users' tabs and windows as well, so you can see what pages they've loaded, and you can add new pages and new tabs and windows with the URLs that you're choosing. You can do internationalization. So one of the nice things about the extension framework is it says right from the start, we care about localizing our extensions, having different languages supported, and that's actually built into the whole extension mechanism where you have an API for that built in. So it's like you don't have to pull in your own one based on, you don't have to find a JavaScript internationalization API. It's already there from the start. And there's a lot more too. Paul's going to cover a lot more details about the actual APIs that you can get hold of, the features that are available to you as an extension developer. But that's the way it looks. It's really straightforward. The configuration for it is just, let's see. So you've got a name, you've got a description, and some icons. Those things define what the extension is and how it appears to users. Those things will appear in user interfaces related to extensions. So they'll appear in the catalog, they'll appear when you install the extension, they'll appear when you list all of the extensions that you've got installed. You've also got the version number there, which is the key thing for the auto update mechanism. And you also have permissions. So when it comes to the permissions there, those are the things that you're declaring that their extension needs. They're good for security because it means we can allow extensions to have access to a very rich set of functionality, but not all extensions need that. So users can actually be aware of which extensions actually need that and make the decision themselves about whether they're going to allow that this particular extension to get hold of these permissions. You also get to develop right inside Chrome as well. So if I actually go in here, Chrome : extensions, or I could actually access it from the window as well, up here, window extensions, I can actually see the extensions that I've got here. I'm in developer mode, but as a normal user, you just have a very simple list of extensions. And then what you can actually do is you can add your own extension too. So if I go in here, load unpacked extension, I can actually surf through to where I'm programming. I've got an extension that I'm writing called Control Freak. And this is a directory, so it's just a standard directory with all of my files for the extension. Those are that's the code for my extension. I just select the whole directory. I don't have to pack it up or anything because we're just developing here and it's loaded. So that's my new extension. It's got my icon loaded and the extension's already running. So you can see here, that's the icon for my extension that's just been added straight away. What you can also do is you can reload. So as you're developing, you can keep hitting reload. You don't have to pack things up. You don't have to restart the browser or anything like that. It's just a matter of changing a file and hitting reload and your extension's now active. You can also access the console. So there's a separate session in this track today about Chrome developer tools, which I recommend seeing if you're interested in general web development and also in extension development, because actually you can actually take advantage of the Chrome built-in developer tools right inside Chrome when you're actually doing extension development too. So just like every normal page has all of this information, it has the dev tools down here. Likewise, you can access this for your extension as well. And so this is what a background page. It's like an invisible page that Paul will talk more about. That every extension can have an invisible page that's always running, and we can actually access the console for my extensions background page. Yeah, so that's what we're looking at there is the dev tools for my own extension. So I'll leave it there for now, and Paul's going to talk more about the details of Chrome extension development.
Cool. So my name's Paul. I'm a developer advocate at Google. I work alongside Mike on Chrome, HTML5, Web Store, and Chrome extensions. And now I'm going to show you how to build some of these kind of extensions that Mike has shown you. The first thing to note about extensions is that there are about 3 main views that you as a developer can take advantage of to, surface your application to the user. The first view is this thing called the browser action, and Mike showed you these before. But a browser actions basically they just live through the whole lifetime of the browser session, and it's a quick way for the user to actually interact with your extension basically. It's really easy to set up. So you declare that your manifest, or you declare that your extension in the manifest will use a browser action. It's a really small piece of code or JavaScript. It's like 3 or 4 lines of code. You can describe, the appearance of your browser action by setting the icon. You can give it a basic title, and you can also set a pop-up as well. And we'll talk about pop-ups in a minute. But one of the really cool things about browser actions is that you can actually modify them from inside the code, inside your extension. This is all JavaScript. There's no kind of special language that you have to learn other than the Chrome APIs. And I'll just try and do some examples. So we have an orange extension just here at the top, and we're going to manipulate that through this extension that we have now. So I'll put the number 100 in, for instance. We can actually provide nice feedback to the user about kind of, information that has kind of been generated by your extension. We can surface to the user. So for instance, if you have like a Twitter feed and you have you're monitoring like @replies or direct messages, you can alert the user nicely and quickly without kind of any obstruction, just through that kind of set in the text. But you can also do really cool things as well. So you can change the background color. So we're kind of flipping between different colors. But the really, really cool thing is that this icon here, we loaded it before as an image from the kind of the local resource, essentially. But it's actually a canvas, HTML5 canvas element that you can manipulate. So you can do some really advanced things, such as, in this case, we're going to animate it. I don't know whether did we see that? Yeah, that's pretty cool. So you can do really advanced things to actually interact with the user in really subtle ways. And it's all just using JavaScript, HTML, and, well, actually just JavaScript in this case because it's a canvas. We mentioned before that browser actions live for the lifetime of the browser session. They're always visible. You can't get rid of them unless the user uninstalls the extension. Page actions are slightly different. Page actions are only kind of visible in a specific context. So a great example is we didn't build RSS feed detection into Chrome, but you can install an extension which will interact with the web page, interact with the DOM, detect when an RSS feed is actually available, and then show the user, a nice little icon to say that there's an RSS feed on that page. And as we saw here, this is a page action. This top one in here. It's a really nice way of interacting with the user, only when you don't have to clutter the user interface up for the whole of the browser experience. You only do it for very specific pages or when you detect something in the page. And again, it's really easy to actually interact with. You have to declare that your extension will use a page action. Again, you just do that in the manifest file. It's a really simple bit of JavaScript. And then you have a JavaScript function called chrome.pageaction.show. And essentially that will show that page action for your extension in the current page or inside the current tab. Ooh. So just to recap, we have browser actions, which are, they're available throughout, the kind of the whole of the browser experience for the user. They're great if you always want the user to have access to your extension. And page actions are just used for when, you want, it's like there's a specific context that you only want to have your application or your extension available. Page actions, RSS feed detection, they're really great examples of where they're both used together. The thing about browser actions is that you can do a couple of things with them. So, for instance, you can detect when the user clicks it, so you can have like a click handler, which will maybe do some kind of logic inside your extension. But you can also have a massive kind of HTML surface. So we click here. So we have a pop-up window, which is visible. So basically, in the manifest, you can choose to provide a pop-up. If you don't provide a pop-up, you have to have like an on-click event handler to kind of manage whatever the user does. If you have a pop-up, it appears just here. But essentially, it's just HTML, JavaScript, CSS. It's a great way for you to expose the functionality of your extension to the users. But the important thing to notice is, whilst extensions live for the lifetime of the browser session, pop-up windows, anything that you set inside the pop-up window, lives and dies with that pop-up window. So if I was to do some manipulation of some data inside this pop-up window, and I close it, it's lost to the user then. Which brings us on to like a really important point. We have this idea of background pages, and background pages are like the brains of your application. That's where all the logic happens, essentially. So if you have a pop-up window which does some computation, actually what you probably need to do is you need to send all that that work to the background page. And because the background page lives for the lifetime of the browser, it can keep state, it can keep track of things. You can use it to manage communication between pop-up windows and content scripts. And it's basically everything you do will be through a background page. And again, the background page is it's like HTML, JavaScript. It's really, really simple. So just to kind of recover this kind of the idea of the areas that you have to manipulate inside your extension, we have the browser action, which is always visible, page action, which is only available for specific context, and then the pop-up, which you can show users when the user clicks on any one of those actions. But we mentioned before, and Mike showed you the kind of the idea of being able to manipulate the DOM using the color switcher extension. You know, we got the example here, but essentially, content scripts allow you to access the DOM. Your extension can manipulate pretty much any page that there's on, like the user's using or browsing at the time. You can access the DOM. You can insert brand new bits of JavaScript. It's actually a really powerful way to add functionality to a site which doesn't actually already have that functionality built in. We have a sample which I can't actually show you at the moment, but there's a really great sample for kind of integrating Google News and Twitter streams. It's a really cool demo. But you know, we're not going to implement Twitter streams inside Google News. But if you want that data there, you know, you can just install an extension. It can inject the HTML straight into the page, and away it goes. The really important thing about content scripts, though, is, you know, content scripts and extensions have kind of access to the really powerful APIs from like the Chrome extension APIs. So, you know, a background page or content script can talk to a background page. So a content script can talk to a background page and kind of interact with the bookmark APIs and things like that. But what you need to know is that a background, like a normal page that you're interacting with inside your DOM, can't talk to a content script. So it kind of means that the way to phrase this is, you know, a badly written page can't exploit your code inside your extension. So there's like a clear security model and like a wall between your content script code and the actual code and the DOM, essentially. The content scripts can manipulate the DOM, and they can actually inject new JavaScript, but the page can't access anything to do with the Chrome extension, which is really important because we have some really powerful APIs, and we don't want you know, an untrustworthy website to be able to kind of ruin your browser experience. So we mentioned before, so background pages, pop-ups, and all that type of stuff have full access to the entire Chrome namespace, which includes bookmark manipulation, history manipulation, and all that type of stuff. Content scripts have more limited access. You know, if you wanted to manipulate the bookmarks, you have to send a message from the content script to the background page to do that work. But essentially, it has some access to a smaller namespace, whereas normal web pages have no access to any of this really rich advanced functionality. So I've kind of talked about the surface areas and, you know, how you can actually, you know, the types of extensions that you can build. It's probably better if I show you some kind of code and show you how easy it is. So the first thing we're going to do is, right, we've got some code in the next slides, which are just little bits of JavaScript to show you how to interact with all these APIs. But probably the most important thing, and you'll see this in every single API that I'm going to show today, is that we use asynchronous callbacks to get data from the Chrome extension, or from Chrome, basically. And the reason we do this is because it's like the process model for Chrome. Each window or each tab or each page is in a different process to every other page. It's also in a different process to the Chrome browser. So if you want to get content from, you know, Chrome, so maybe you want to get a list of windows, for instance, you know, you can't do it like synchronously. You can't just say get windows, because, you know, it could take, you know, half a second, not half a second, but a noticeable amount of time to actually get that data back from, you know, the Chrome system. You know, it could lock the browser up. It really provides a really bad user experience. And because we're also doing inter-process communication to get this data, we have to return everything asynchronously. So you'll see this in all the APIs that we're going to demo today. So the first one, and it's actually it's quite a powerful API, which we talked about, is content scripts. This content script is really simple, but it provides a nice piece of functionality. It's really easy to define. You define in your manifest a section called content scripts. You also define where here, so this matches element, where the content script can run. So this content script can't run across every single page that the user goes to. It can only work on flickr.com. And in this case, we're going to inject a CSS script into everything that we find on flickr.com. And the CSS script we're going to do is this one here. So for every image, we're going to start like an animation. And when the user hovers over the animation, hovers over the image, we're going to kind of perform the animation. And just to show you what it looks like without kind of the extension kicking in. So it's actually really important as well. So this is incognito mode. Extensions can't run in incognito mode unless you as the user say, you know, explicitly allow that. But we see here there's a lot of images. You know, they're not amazingly interactive. And you're writing an extension. You want to enhance the Flickr site. It's, you know, it's something that Flickr aren't going to do themselves, but you as the extension developer can do this quite easily. So we open up Flickr. There we are. So basically what's happened is my extension's running. The content script is detected we're on flickr.com. So it's injected some CSS into that page. And here we go. We'll hover over some of these. Are these working? No. Let's refresh. Yeah, there we are. Cool. So, you know, we provide like a zoom. It's a very basic kind of content script. There's absolutely no code involved in this. It's just manipulating the CSS. Yeah, and all we're doing is we're resizing the images. It's not, you know, it's not the greatest, extension, but it's a really nice example of how powerful like the content script subsystem is. Chrome extensions, you have the ability to manipulate and manage kind of any window inside Chrome. So one of the things, so if you're building a HTML application or a web application, you can open windows quite easily, but you can't find windows easily. You can't manipulate the sizes of any arbitrary tab and all this type of stuff. With the Chrome extension API, there's a chrome.windows namespace, and essentially you can get the list of windows that Chrome currently has running. You can do things like get a list of tabs that are always running. And we saw the screenshot API, the screenshot extension before. There's actually an API to actually capture the screenshot of the currently visible tab. So you can do some really powerful things. And this is a simple example. So we're just opening 3 windows, and we're closing them after a specific period. It's a very basic example, but you can do some really amazing things with access to the tabs and windows. So you can do things like group windows by domain or group tabs by domain. So you could have a separate window for each tab, each domain. So it's like all the tabs for Flickr.com are inside one window. All the tabs for Google Mail are, inside another window. There's really powerful things that you can do with this API. And like Mike mentioned before, we have the history API. So what you can do is you can actually query the history API with kind of arbitrary search terms, but you can also do things like, insert items into the history, remove items from the history as well. And again, so history, getting access to the user's history is quite a powerful thing. So you have to declare a permission called history. Once you have that, the user installs the extension. It says, this user or this extension wants access to all your history. But then you get access to this whole piece of code here. It's a really simple API. So in this case, it's chrome.history.search. And we have a query to search for just BBC items. And as we see on the right-hand side here, this is all the items that had the reference to the BBC inside their page. It's a really powerful API, and you can do some really advanced things with it. Very similar to the history API, and you'll notice that a lot of these APIs are really similar, is that we have the bookmarks API. Again, getting access to the user's bookmarks requires you to ask for permission. It's simple in the manifest. You just put it in the manifest there. But as you can see on the right-hand side, we have a list of the 5 most recent bookmark items. And again, it's just a really simple API, chrome.bookmarks.get. We're going to get 5 items. There's an asynchronous callback, which returns a list of all the bookmarks from that query. There's a lot more to this API. I can't really show you just in kind of one presentation, but you can do things like you can add bookmarks, remove bookmarks, analyze all the bookmarks that the user has, get the titles. You can probably hook it up with the history API to get the most recent title from like an item and then apply it to a bookmark that exists so that the bookmark names are always up to date. You can create folders. You can move items between folders. I mean, there's loads that you can do with this API. It's really cool. A relatively recent API is the management API. And the management API allows you to get a list of all the extensions and applications installed into the Chrome browser. Again, it's really common. You have to have a permission available there or like inside the manifest. And again, the code itself is really simple, chrome.management.getAll. And this, again, just returns a list of every single extension installed into the system. It's a really powerful API, and as we see here, we've got 4 or 5, or actually probably about 8 extensions installed. You can do things as well, like listen to when an extension has been inserted or removed. So if you wanted to build, let's get this up. So the management API comes into play when you actually want to build your own, because you can build your own new tab page. If you want to install all the applications across, say, the top of, you want to customize your own new tab page and you want to have all the icons across the top, you can use the Chrome Management API to get a list of all the applications, display them in a nice, really fancy user interface, but then also remove them and add them in once once you detect an extension's been installed. It's really powerful. We have the ability to actually add context menus into the browser. We have a demo as well. So let's have a look. So context menus allow you to integrate into the right-click functionality. So we have a test page there at the bottom. You can actually choose where you want this context menu to appear. So for instance, you could just say, I only want my context menu to appear on like a user selection of text. You can also tell it to appear only when the user right-clicks on an image. But once you've done that, you can build a whole kind of menu subsystem inside there, and then listen to the events of when a user actually clicks on there to actually perform an action. It's really cool. The code itself is pretty simple. Again, you declare a permission, context menus. You give it a list of contexts that you want. So in this case, the extension that I've developed here says anything you right-click on, you're going to display a context menu. But essentially, you can list it just down to images or videos, and every time that the user right-clicks on an image, you get the context menu. If they don't right-click on like a piece of text, they won't. But essentially, you just do chrome.contextmenus.create. You give it a title, the context, so image, video, and all that type of stuff, and then a handler. It's really simple to create these menus, and you don't actually have to do that much to actually get context menus into every web page on the user visits. We can also do really powerful things as well. So if I leave this, okay, I'm going to leave this for a second or two. So we have this idle API, which allows you to detect whether a user is actually using Chrome, whether they're using, or whether they kind of walked away from their machine or locked their machine. At the moment, the current state is active. Cool, let's just switch those doing that. So it went from active to idle because I've not touched my machine for 15 seconds. It's really great if you've got something like an IM extension, which needs to know whether, to set like the away status, or whether you want to kind of like blank out the screen. And there's a whole load of things that you can do when you detect that the user is no longer actually using their machine. And if I was to, well, I can't wait 15 seconds, but now that I'm using it and moving the mouse around, it'll go back to active. It's not an instantaneous API. You have to give it like at least 15 seconds to pick up the change in state. So Chrome extensions, we've mentioned before that they can access kind of the contents of any page through content scripts. We can also do really powerful things as well that we can't do in normal web pages, which is cross-domain. Pretty much when anyone develops a web application, they want to kind of hook up with Twitter and call it the search API. You can't do that on normal web applications unless you proxy the data. With Chrome extensions, you can. In the permissions section, you just give it a list of URLs that you want to access. So in this case, I want this extension to call my domain. You just do a normal XML HTTP request. There's nothing special about the code that we've done. There's no special Chrome API for this. We've just basically said kinlan.co.uk is a valid domain that my XML HTTP requests can access. And as you can see on the right, this is the bad HTML code that I developed for my own website. But we've been able to do this in extensions, and it's one of those things that we can't do unless we use CORS in normal web applications. We can also do really powerful things with cookies. So it's been around for a little while now, actually, but you can give a permission inside the manifest to say, my extension wants to be able to access the user's cookies. One of the things that you have to do is, if you ask for this permission, we don't give you access unless you give a list of sites or domains that you want to be able to access. And in this case, I've basically said every cookie on the system, my extension is going to be able to see. I don't expect many users to install applications which can access every single set of cookies, but if you have a very small set, maybe it's like an automatic Gmail logout extension or things like that, you just put the mail.google.com in there, and then if you do a normal query to chrome.cookies.getAll, you'll only get a set of cookies from the mail.google.com. It's not just listing cookies that you can do. You can also manipulate the cookies, so you can add cookies in, you can remove cookies. So you can build some really powerful extensions with that. But the API is essentially, it's that simple. You'll do chrome.cookies.remove essentially. So that's a really high-level view of the main kind of features of the extensions and how you can actually take advantage of them. We also have this idea of experimental APIs. The kind of APIs that we are still developing, which aren't kind of ready for production yet, but are really powerful. The main reason why they're actually inside an experimental stage is that once we launch, an extension into kind of available to every user on the stable channels. We'll add to it. We won't remove functionality from it. When things are in the experimental stage, we'll remove things. We'll add things in. We'll change. We might fundamentally change the APIs, which would break your extensions normally. So these have to be run from a special flag. Chrome by itself won't run experimental APIs. So essentially, you launch it with, if you're on Windows, it'll be chrome.exe, and then this whole enable experimental extensions flag. And that's basically how you you can actually start to take advantage of extensions that have use of experimental APIs. So let's have a look. Refresh this. There we go. It's better. So we have the ability to actually intercept web requests. The web request API, this is why it's experimental. It doesn't quite work yet, so it actually breaks. But you can do things like you'll be able to intercept all the images that are downloaded, and potentially in the future you'll be able to cancel requests when they've come in. So if you wanted to make sure that no images were kind of ever displayed on the user's browser, you could write an extension that did that and actually intercepted the network request either before it got launched or when it came in, so that it was never actually even tried to be rendered. We also have a web navigation API, and the navigation API actually tells you when essentially complete pages or iframes have loaded. So this actually works now. So in this case, we're hooking up to an event called onCompleted, and every time a navigation completes, so this page reloaded, we'll see a new element just there appear. So if we go to, say, TechMeme, reload, hopefully this should drop in any second now. Yep, there we go. So TechMeme's appeared. We've got the ability to access this information. We've never been able to do this before in Chrome extensions. It's really powerful. There's going to be some really powerful applications with this. Things like debugging tools, extra debugging kind of extensions. You'll be able to create profiles yourself. There's a whole host of things that are coming out, but it's not quite ready, which is why it's in the experimental stage still. We have the ability to access the Omnibox. So the Omnibox is this whole section up here. What we mean by this is that you can actually interact with it. So you can register a keyword. So I've registered GDD. If we look down here in the manifest, so I've registered Omnibox keyword GDD. So if I type the word GDD inside the Omnibox, we have this section here, which allows me then to actually type from the Omnibox into my application. So I can't spell. I'll tell you what, I'll embarrass myself. Sorry about that. I'm really sorry, actually. So you can actually provide query APIs from the Omnibox that just talk to your extension. Roman, who was one of the Android advocates yesterday, wrote an extension which queried. Basically, he would type the word A in there, and then he would actually start to query the Android developer resource, essentially. It's just a nice little way that of actually providing extra interaction with the user in the way that they would expect. So users do searches through there. You can actually tell the users, you can search my application through the Omnibox. It's really cool. One of the things, we all know info bars. So if you actually ask for, say, geolocation API permission, you'll get a bar that goes across the top of Chrome. We've never had a way to actually do this inside Chrome for just arbitrary extensions. We can do that now. So essentially, we just call chrome.experimental.infobars show, and then we get the ability to show any arbitrary HTML across any tab there. It's a really nice way of alerting users to, you need them to interact with your extension, but you don't want to throw up an alert box and block the user interface thread. So info bars are really powerful, but again, as you can see, it's not formatted very well. It's just not quite ready, but once it is, it'll be removed from the experimental API and are made available to every single Chrome extension. That's about it for the Chrome extensions kind of experimental section. We have some demo. So we have a local developer is it iDropper? We developed the iDropper extension, and he's going to come up and talk to you about how we developed this extension, and you'll see the really cool things he's done.
Zdravím vás, já jsem Ondra Kudlík, známý také jako Kepi. Budu mluvit v češtině, protože moje angličtina byste pochopili asi akorát vy a tady kolegové asi určitě ne. Takže Já mám jenom kratičky nějaké představení toho, jak jsem vyvíjel rozšíření pro Chrome, který se začalo používat, aniž bych to moc čekal. Klasicky byl jednoduchý nápad, nebo spíš ten problém, to, že mě uchvátilo Chrome, přešel jsem z Firefoxu a potřeboval jsem jakoby něco najednou, co tam nebylo. Protože jsem ani ne tak vývojář, ale prostě pracuji s webovými aplikacemi, upravuju nějaké weby a z Firefoxu jsem byl zvyklý na Colorzillu, která vám umožní vlastně vytáhnout si jakoukoliv barvu ze stránky, pracujete s webem, potřebujete si upravit něco, dopsat si do CSS nějaký pravidla a potřebujete tam prostě přidat barvu a už nevíte, která to byla, nebo se vám na nějaké stránce nějaká barva líbí a potřebujete ji tam dostat. Tak to je to jednoduché, co Colorzilla ve Firefoxu dělala a co v Chrome nebylo. Takže ve chvíli, kdy se objevilo API pro vývojáře na extensiony, tak jsem se rozhodl, že to zkusím, protože rád experimentuju, tak jsem se do toho nějak pustil. A postupem času se mi to podařilo, i když to bylo teda naprosto odlišné od toho, co jsem očekával, protože jsem si samozřejmě myslel, jak to bude hrozně jednoduchý a jak to bude krásný, ale bohužel tak, jak je to API pro Chrome vlastně jakoby mocný, a umožňuje spoustu věcí, tak přece jenom je tam ten přístup na té stejné úrovni jakoby JavaScript, CSS a HTML, takže vám vlastně neumožní dělat cokoliv chcete. A samozřejmě, když si to uvědomíte, většina z vás asi jsou vývojáři, tak pokud pracujete s nějakým webem, tak úplně jednoduše nezjistíte, co máte třeba pod kurzorem zrovna za barvu. Takže moje počáteční pokusy s tím, abych to zjišťoval s CSS, samozřejmě neuspěly hned ve chvíli, kdy jsem si uvědomil, že to budu chtít z obrázku. A tak přišla na řadu zkoumat teda, jak to vyřešit, protože vlastně teď, pokud vím, předchozí přednáška byla o nějakým NDKčku vlastně už pro Chrome, ale tenkrát to možný nebylo a já jsem nevěděl vlastně, jak by to dělat, takže mě samozřejmě napadla jednoduchá idea, udělám screenshot, vezmu si pozici a podle té pozice vlastně zjistím, co tam je za barvu. Díky Canvasu je tohle hrozně jednoduchý. Byly tam další překážky, jako to, že třeba Chrome umožňovalo ze začátku screenshoty jenom z JPEGu, takže ta přesnost těch barev byla velmi, velmi špatná, takže prostě kdekoliv jste najeli, vlastně ve Windows to funguje ještě doteď, protože tam pokud vím, nějak většinou prostě to nešlo, nebo v některých starších verzích. Takže to byly takový nějaký postupem času jako s čím jsem zápasil. Eyedropper je, jak jsem říkal, jednoduchý rozšíření, který v podstatě umí dvě funkce, a to je vybrat nějakou barvu z webové stránky a vybrat barvu z nějaké palety. Setkal jsem se už zase potom, co se týče těch feedbacků od uživatelů, tak těm se zase někteří říkají, že tam prostě nechápou, proč je tam výběr barev z palety, protože na to mají něco jiného, někteří to zase chválí, že se jim to líbí. Takže nakonec jsem to všechno dal do nějakých voleb a dá se to přepínat, můžete si nastavit cokoliv. Co se týče těch schopností, tak umí to teda vytáhnout, co jsem řekl, umí vám barvu automaticky skopírovat do schránky, udržuje si nějaký přehled historie barev, má nějaký klávesové zkratky, o kterých nikdo neví, který vám umožní buď jakoby si začít tu barvu jakoby vzít, nebo umožní vám udělat refresh toho screenshotu, o tom za chviličku ještě řeknu. A u toho vlastně jakoby nabírání té barvy z té webové stránky, tak umí jak to, že vám vlastně nad myší zobrazuje nějaký čtvereček, ve kterým jsou barvy vlastně toho, nad čím jste, tak teďka nedávno jsem přidal infobar, který to zobrazuje vpravo dole. A to, jak jsem říkal s těma screenshotama, tak tam je právě důležitý to, že jakoby to umí scrolling support, to znamená, protože v Chrome lze udělat screenshot jenom té části, které vidíte. To mě třeba překvapilo hrozně, to pak se spolu bych chtěl ještě zeptat, ale vy nemůžete udělat screenshot té aplikace tak, jak je. Já bych čekal od WebKitu, že by to nějak měl jako zvládnout, ale bohužel neumí. Ano, ten to umí dělat to v podstatě přesně jako já, to znamená, on vám jakoby proskroluje tu stránku a povyfotí, pospojuje. Takže je to jedno. Super, přeplo to tam přesně, kam jsem chtěl. Co používá ten eyedropper, tak jsou vlastně z těch akcí, které tady bylo řečený. Používá to nějakou browser action na pozadí, to znamená nějaký ty background skripty, používá to pop-up window, měnění badge, Používá to injected skripty, který jsem se rozhodl vlastně použít na rozdíl od těch content skriptů, které jsou jakoby možný pro stránku vložit a měl jsem je předtím. Tak jsem vlastně po nějakým čtvrtroce zjistil, že ty moje skripty tam vlastně běží furt, ať si člověk teda něco vybírá nebo ne, což je dost zbytečný. A samozřejmě má nějakou stránku s optionama. Já to když tak předvedu a přitom si možná ještě vzpomenu na něco. Jo. Aha. To je super, no tady vezmeme třeba Flickr. Doufám, že to bude fungovat. Vlastně tady je ta extensiona, v badži ze začátku není nic. Jak se na tom kliká? Už se to povedlo. Takže vlastně zobrazí se vám něco, tady jsou nějaké taby, jak jsem už říkal, na paletu barev, něco prostě o té aplikaci a tady je vybrání z toho webu. Kliknete, jednoduše se vám obrazí kurzor a prostě když přejíždíte, tak vám to ukazuje vlastně tu barvu, co je pod kurzorem. Tady si můžete všimnout přesně toho, o čem jsem mluvil a co je problém, co se nějak snažím vyřešit a nevím, jestli to nebudu muset vyřešit tím NDKčkem. A to je to, že pokud se na té stránce stane nějaká akce, zvětší se obrázek nebo cokoliv, tak já vlastně mám jakoby jenom ten údaj z té doby předtím a tím pádem nedokážu říct, co je v té chvíli. To znamená třeba nad videem nebo nad animovaným gifem nedokážu říct, co tam je. Stejně tak to nedokážu říct nad obrázkem, který změní CSS-kem nějakou barvu. Myslím, že na to už si teď nespomenu, která právě ta klávesovka, to jsem si dělal jenom pro testování, tak vám může udělat refresh toho screenshotu, ale zatím jsem nepřišel na způsob, jak uživateli vysvětlit, jak to použít, takže jsem to zatím nějak jako nezvýrazňuju. Důležitý je, na co jsem narazil a na co pokud něco takového budete vyvíjet, nebo v podstatě jakoukoliv extensionu, kterou budete vyvíjet, tak důležitá věc, na kterou jsem narazil, je to, že když uděláte jakýkoliv update a změníte právě hlavně tu background page, tak vy nemáte jakoby způsob, jak to updatenout, tak aby se stalo to, co chcete. A hlavně, když použijete content skripty, tak oni se vám nezmění, dokud ten uživatel nereloadne stránku, protože vy máte otevřených třeba 15 tabů, nainstalujete si rozšíření, ale ono vám to tam automaticky nedohodí, všechny ty javascripty, které tam máte, chcete něco dělat a musíte v podstatě donutit uživatele buď, aby tu stránku obnovil, anebo musíte udělat to, že tam ty skripty nějak vložíte, což naštěstí jde. Je to tam, jak říkám, je tam nějaká metoda prostě v API na inject skriptu. A pak si v podstatě musíte vyřešit další věc a to je to, co se stane, když vy to rozšíření aktualizujete a přinesete něco jakoby novýho a vy očekáváte od toho content scriptu, že vám najednou má umět funkci prostě XY, která v předchozí verzi nebyla a z pop-upu voláte funkci, která prostě ta stránka neumí. Takže tohle všechno se dá docela jednoduše, když vás to napadne nebo když někde najdete, tak se to dá velice jednoduše ošetřit tím, že si tam předáte nějaký verze, pokud zjistí content script, že je jiné verze, reloadne se, hotovo, vyřešeno, máte to, co potřebujete. A to je jakoby z větší části asi všecko. Ještě jsem chtěl říct, že tam právě docela dlouho jsem přemýšlel nad tím, jak vyřešit tu věc, že hodně uživatelů si stěžuje na to, že vlastně pokud chcou získat tu barvu, tak si musí nejdřív otevřít ten pop-up, pak si musí vybrat tady to tlačítko a pak teprve můžou nabírat. Zase nemohl jsem přijít na způsob, jak to udělat vlastně, aby pokud dostanou teda pokud chcou vybrat barvu, aby mohli vybrat barvu, ale pokud se chcou dostat na historii, tak aby se dostali k té historii. Samozřejmě úplně jednoduše to jde tou page action, kterou tady máte zvýrazněnou třeba u toho mění barev. Takže už plánuji, jak to udělat, že pro page action bude možný nabírat ty barvy, pak bude někde historie. Je to jenom o tom si to asi rozmyslet. Já, jak jsem říkal, dělal jsem to jenom jakoby v podstatě pro sebe to rozšíření, takže jsem nad tím jakoby ze začátku moc nepřemýšlel, ale myslím si, že těch cest a ještě díky teda mnoha těm věcem, které tady byly zmíněny teďka, co se týče toho jakoby budoucího vývoje, tak se tam otevírá hodně zajímavých cest a myslím, že to bude ještě snad líp. A to je ode mě asi všecko. Díky. Řekl bych, že Jak dlouho trvalo vlastně vývoj toho rozšíření? Řekl bych, že od té první myšlenky v podstatě víkend k nějakému prototypu, pak 2 dny na to uvědomit si, že je to celý špatně, pak asi den napsat to znovu a teďka nedávno, když jsem právě přišel na to s těma content scriptama, to, jak to udělat líp všechno, aby to bylo méně paměťově náročné a na to, že to jde udělat prostě jakoby rozuměji, tak tam byly v podstatě asi 2-3 dny na rewrite a tam asi pro vás zmíním ještě teda důležitou věc. Za prvé ty kódy k té mé aplikaci jdou najít, když tak na GitHubu, je tam odkaz i přímo z té stránky, kde si instalujete jakoby to rozšíření, takže si můžete podívat na zdrojáky, můžete s tím dělat. A hlavně na každé, jak se tomu říká, raz, dva, tři, každou extensionu, ač to těm autorům nemusí být milý, tak každou si v tom developer módu, já si to můžu ukázat, jestli to někde bylo. Jo, tady jsou extensiony a v tom developer módu vy tady vidíte takový pěkný řetězec, přes který si můžete vlastně na file systému v profilu Chromu najít adresář extensions a v něm jsou tady ty adresáře a v něm vidíte kódy všech rozšíření, které máte nainstalovaný. Takže přes tohle se můžete dozvědět docela dost zajímavých věcí, přijít na to, jak někdo něco dělá. Já samozřejmě neříkám to krást nebo něco, samozřejmě vždycky respektujte licence, ale určitě se dá najít jakoby spousta zajímavých věcí. A teda hodně rozšíření, se kterými jsem se setkal a které jsou úspěšný, ať už třeba Twitter klienty nebo tak jsou většinou open source a najdete k ním zdrojáky, můžete s tím pracovat, mývají tam prostě na stránkách odkazy k toho, jak si jakoby z toho něco najít. Ale tím, že to je fakt jenom HTML5, CSS, JavaScript, dá se s tím prostě velmi jednoduše pracovat. Já řeknu, že JavaScriptu jsem předtím nikdy moc neprogramoval a nějak se to jako zadařilo. Ještě někdo něco? No. Sdílím to vyloženě používám vlastně tu Chrome Gallery, to znamená, kdykoliv je nějaká nová verze, což je samozřejmě hrozná, jak se to říká slušně, no je s tím prostě dost práce, udělá se nová verze, musí se napsat changelogy, třeba nový screenshoty toho, jak to vypadá, nahraje to všechno na Chrome Gallery a uživatelé automaticky, jakmile vy tam změníte číslo verze, vlastně uděláte z toho zip jenom, v Chrome Gallery nahrajete, on to automaticky z toho vytvoří to CRX a automaticky to uživatelům nabídne k updateu. V podstatě stačí restartovat browser, když to potřebujete vynutit a to rozšíření se vám jakoby hnedka jakoby načte. Jo, takže na webu to nedělám, jsou dokonce i metody na to, jak udělat ten auto-update, je to popsané na těch developer stránkách, to nevím přesně teďka z adresu, ale když si dáte, a tam je prostě všecko k tomuhle. Tak. Někdo něco? Ano, je to popsaný přímo v tom API jako jedna z věcí, protože řekl bych, že v tom ten Google Evil se snaží právě jakoby ukázat, že jsou otevření a snaží se prostě nabízet ty možnosti, jak to dělat u sebe, protože vy to rozšíření nemusíte chtít na tomhle storu vlastně jakoby mít zveřejněný, ale můžete ho chtít dávat, takže tam jsou popsány ty metody, jak se vás to vlastně potom dotáže, co s tím dělat. Ještě? Okay. No. Chci to řešit, protože to zrovna někdo chtěl, takže chci to řešit. Jdou samozřejmě potom ve chvíli, kdy už je aktivní ten content script nebo něco, nebo respektive přidáte si malý content script s JavaScriptem, který poslouchá klávesy, hotovo. Jo? Přesně tak. Obecný, zeptat se spíš tady to. Jo, tak díky.